Hello and welcome to an introduction to faction warfare. We're going to take a look at this content, how we can do it for fun, make a little profit off it and get some PvP experience. So you can first start interacting with faction warfare from a tab in your main menu here under activities, and you can see there's one called faction warfare. So if we just click on that, it can bring up this screen. Now this screen can change depending on where you are in space. I am in Caldari space and I'm at a State Protectorate, which is the Faction Warfare NPC Corp. Each of the empires has one of these corps that represents them in faction warfare, and to participate in faction warfare properly and make money from it, you really have to join up with one of these NPC corps. So we're just going to be focusing on the Caldari military or CalMil side of things for this example, but if you want to fight for any other factions, it really is just your choice. And if you're doing it for profit, there might be some market research involved, and some of the other factions can temporarily be more profitable for a while. We'll get into that in a little bit. So this screen has a lot of information on it. So let's break it down a little bit. What we have here is a list of active faction warfare systems. The ones in the blue are the ones that CalMil currently controls. The ones in the red are the ones that the Gallente militia currently controls. Now you can see from this that CalMil is doing a little bit better than GalMil. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go fight for GalMil. There can be positives for fighting for a side that is losing. So if I wasn't already part of this NPC Corp, down here you could sign up to fight for CalMil. Now that does a few things. One, it puts you at war with the other two militias. So each empire has an ally, has a main enemy, and then has that enemy's ally as an enemy, if that makes sense. That was a bit confusing. But basically, Caldari and Amar are aligned, and Gallente and Minmatar are aligned. So immediately you'll be at war with pilots from the Gallente Federation and the Minmatar Republic. Those act like war targets, which means that HiSec, once you're signed up for faction warfare, is no longer safe. Just in the same way that if you were taking a brave main character through HiSec, you have to look out for war targets most of the time. Now, they can't stay for a long period of time in your opposing faction warfare, just like if you've ever interacted with a kind of criminal system. Eventually, if you stray into enemy territory in HiSec, the military will show up and destroy your ship, but they're not quite like Concord. You can run away from them, which means that a savvy enemy war target pilot can sit on the undock for a while and blap you with a tornado or something like that all day. So you do have to be a little bit careful once you sign up for this. Okay, so what is these bars telling us? Well, these bars represent a sort of upgrade status in the faction warfare and sort of give a general idea of how each faction is doing. So the fact that they've controlled many systems and upgraded these systems puts them into what's known as Tier 3. Now Tier 3 means that the rewards for participating in faction warfare are greatly enhanced, whereas if you were fighting for the Glentes, they're only in Tier 1, and that would mean that the rewards are reduced. However, because everything in EVE is supply and demand, the items that you can get that you may want to sell for participating in this content are much easier to get for Caldari, because you can earn the currency, the loyalty points associated with this a lot easier than you can in the Gallente, which means that the prices for Caldari specific items tend to go down over time if they stay in these high tiers. Whereas because there's fewer pilots and fewer upgrades, Gallente specific items tend to increase in price. So that's why if you're just doing this from a purely profit sense, then you may want to stick a character in the losing team and gain some of those rarer points, or save your points for when this maybe swings back to the Gallente's favour. But that's sort of a little bit more complicated and long-term stuff. I just thought I'd mention it now to give you an idea of why you shouldn't just fight for the winning team. Okay, so how do we actually get these loyalty points? Well, there's really two main ways. We'll only really cover one of those ways in this course. The one that we won't cover too much is doing missions for the State Protector, and these are similar in the way to your standard high-sec missions when you run, if you've ever run any of these level 1, 2, or 3 or 4 agent missions, except they usually take place in low-sec in one of these faction warfare systems, which means you need to worry about players dropping in on your mission. But these earn you loyalty points just in the same way that running for other NPC corps and EVE will earn you loyalty points. However, in space, in these faction warfare systems, there are signatures that you can warp to, kind of like you would warp to a combat site using your probe scanner. You don't need to scan them down, and they're called complexes, or plexes for short. And these come in different levels. We'll go have a look at these in a little bit. The introductory one is called the Novice Plex. That's the one that we're going to just focus on for just now. And that Novice Plex has some major restrictions in that only Tech 1 and faction frigates can enter that complex, which means that anything larger is basically eliminated from entering. So once you're inside that complex, it means that they can't just bring in a large ship in order to beat you. So it's to try and make it a little bit more fairer, and this is why faction warfare is sometimes seen as a sort of introduction to PvP, because it is the only thing in EVE that you can really sort of balance the playing field a little bit. Of course, they can just have very expensive pirate faction frigates and warp those in and come in with friends. There's no limit to the number of people inside a Plex. And still beat you hands down that way. But there's things that you can do to defend yourself, so we'll explore those in a little while. But basically, I just want to focus on choosing a target just now. And what you do there is look at this screen with these systems. You can organize by how many jumps these things are away from you. Now you can see that obviously the Calmel has control of many systems. In fact, the nearest system that we don't have control is 5 jumps away. Any blue system, you will be defensively running these complexes. You can see that some of these systems have a capture status. Okay, now that is how, in a blue system, that is how much progress has the enemy made to capturing this system from you. So you can see here in Suggerento that there is no progress been made. There will be no loyalty points awarded for capturing plexes in these systems, and therefore if you want to defensively plex, there's no reason to go to stable systems. However, you can see that some of these has higher percentage capture status, like Temo here is 30% contested. Now if we were to go here and run a complex, and we'll show how that's done in a little minute, then we can reduce this number. Okay, so you as the single pilot can have an impact on this map, and then by running many complexes you can get the percentage down in the blue system much closer to 0, and that stops the enemy from being able to capture a system. And that's supposed to be the goal of faction warfare. Conversely, in a red system, you can see here that in Filet, that this one is stable. Now you could go here because this one we're trying to capture, so currently no progress has been made from us to capture this system, and the other system that Gaumel holds, Alperina, there is a little bit of progress. So either of these systems would be fine to go and start plexing in because you're offensively trying to plex them. Now in defensive plexing, you have the advantage that you just need to warp into the site and sit there for an appropriate amount of time and not die within range of a beacon. And that will capture the site after a while if no one comes in on you, and you'll gain some loyalty points that way. In an offensive plex, you must periodically destroy an NPC spawn or the timer pauses for the capturing process on the plex. So that means that you have to fit a ship with guns on it, and you have to do a certain amount of DPS depending on the size of the complex. Larger sizes go from novice, small, medium, and large, and each one has a NPC that will tank more damage. But for a frigate and a novice, anything over 50 DPS is pretty okay, and that should be easy enough to get from a day 1 alpha character. If you can get it towards 100, you'll kill the thing a little bit faster, and you can just reduce the overall time. Because obviously when the timer is paused for the capturing process, then it makes it a little bit longer, and leaves you open to attack for a little bit longer. Okay, so let's go run one of these complexes for some LP so that we can make some money off of this content. So I've just chosen Tama here. For now, we'll see what the system looks like when we get into it. It's been traditionally, this one's quite a dangerous system because it is a high sec border. But we're going to go see what it's like today. I haven't been there in a while myself. It is owned by Calmel, which means we'll be defensively plexing it if we choose to stay. But we are jumping into a low sec system, so you want to make sure that your safety is at least on yellow, but I would suggest that you just put it on red once you're a bit more comfortable with what you're doing. Okay, so we've jumped into this low sec system, and you can see that the gate is currently clear, which means that it would be safe to warp off, and I would suggest that you do that immediately. When I get into a system, I like to just go to a planet, any random planet, to get off the gate as fast as possible. Now, if you've never been in low sec before at all, when you're on a gate, there are gate guns there that if someone was to engage you illegally, then they would have to take gate gun fire. However, that is tankable, especially in something like a cruiser or higher, or if they have remote reps. And if they are gate camping, they likely know that they're going to take gate guns, and they will be prepared for that. So don't think that is going to save you. Now I've got off the gate, which is fine, but I'm at a place that someone else can also warp to. So immediately I'm going to actually create a safe. To do that, we'll pick another planet. Normally I would do this in the first planet, but I was talking to you guys. When I'm mid-warp, this is just a quick safe, it's not the best one in the world. When I'm mid-warp, I'm just going to bring Control B to bring this up, submit that in space, and then warp back there. Now what that means is that someone will need to bring at least combat probes in order to find me, otherwise I'm completely safe from them. Now there will be hunters who will bring combat probes, so you're not fully safe, but you just made it a little bit harder for your average pilot to basically find you and come kill you. Now the next thing that you should do, or once you're in the new system, is bring up local and make sure that you can see most of the pilots, preferably all of them. You can make this a little bit smaller if I remember. Show compact member list, there you go. So that just gets rid of the portraits and allows you to keep this small. You can see here that in this case all of the targets are neutral and one is a suspect, but none of them are war targets. So like I was saying before, on a gate, if someone engages you illegally, they'll take gate gun fire, but war targets can legally engage you, which means that they don't have to worry about gate guns, and you don't have to worry about gate guns if you want to engage a war target on a gate. So if there's a war target camp, you might just get locked and killed, and they don't have to worry about taking any gate gun fire in that case. Okay, so this system is fairly safe for me right now. There's quite a lot of neutrals, but no war targets. So what we're going to do is, we can see in our overview here that I've already got these complexes showing up. Now these can be a little bit dangerous sometimes to go to potentially, because these are already popped or open. Now if you hit Alt P to bring up your probe window, you can see that these complexes are also listed on here, but there may be some on here that don't appear in your overview, and these are the unpopped ones, the fresh ones. Now, if say, you know, one of these complexes were not in the overview, and you were to warp to it, it would then appear in the overview, and that effectively sends a signal to everyone in local that there's someone has just popped that open and is likely on their way. So that can also be dangerous from the point of view that you've just given intel that there's likely a pilot on the way to that complex, i.e. a free target they could go fire if they were hunting. Okay, now because we're in a frigate here and we're a new player, we are going to focus on these novice outposts, which are the smallest type. Now, I can see this one is already open. If you hold down C and click on it, you can quickly view it in the direction that it is in space, and you can do that with anything in your overview. And this is really powerful because the next thing you really need to know about for doing faction warfare is how to use your D scanner. So Alt D will bring up your directional scanner. It's one of the most useful yet for new players underused tools in the game. So the directional scanner is down here in the way that they've redesigned this window, which I'm not particularly loving, but we will put it over here just so that I can see my overview. This is important because if I had my screen covered fully with the directional scanner, someone could warp into me right now and I wouldn't see them, and they could just get a free kill, which I don't want to happen. Okay, so the directional scanner can seem complicated at first, but all you need to use it for is some basic functions. So you can set the range here, down in the left, and then you can set the angle that the directional scanner will see. If you set this to 360 and 14.3 AU, you will see everything that would otherwise appear in your overview, or with the filtered settings here, appear on here. Now we can see we've seen some ships already. So there's a Tormentor and a Tristan. We don't get to see what pilot they belong to unless they haven't renamed their ship, and that's why it's very important when you get a new ship that you want to rename it something that doesn't give away the name of your pilot. And that is important because if there's a war target and they didn't rename their ship, I could tell if that was a war target or just a neutral. But these ones have been renamed, and therefore I can't tell and I don't get that intel. Because it's not on grid with me, it doesn't have a distance. And these other stations that you can see do have a distance, although they're not really on grid with me. They're just they know the distance, so they have the distance there. If you see one of these ships suddenly appear with a distance, that means it's on grid with you and it's probably become a threat. However, this 360 degree in long range doesn't really tell me where these things are. It just tells me that they're within 14.3 AU of me, which is the maximum distance the directional scanner can go. However, if I do that, hit C, so that I go and look at this novice outpost again, and I reduce the angle all the way down to 5 degrees, you can hopefully see in that window there that I now have a very, very small cone that's just intersecting with the novice outpost, and unfortunately it's also intersecting probably with some of these other objects here. But if I rescan, I get no hits. Now that means unless there's anything cloaked, I have just discovered that although this thing is far away, there's nothing there unless it's cloaked, which means that it should be safe for me to warp to, and I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to warp to that. I close that momentarily, and let's see if the directional scanner was right. Once you land on grid with a complex or a plex, there'll be an acceleration gate. Normally, it is a good idea, here it is, to immediately, some free drones, to immediately take that gate. If you land on the gate at 0, and you click this as soon as it appears, no one can lock you on the gate. They have to follow you in, okay? It is impossible to catch you on the gate if you're fast enough. Alright. Now you can see that there's been some stuff happening here. There's a lot of drones, but there's no pilots. Okay, there's some friendly drones and some neutral drones. Immediately, when I get into a defensive plex or any plex, I'm going to go to my D scanner, I'm going to increase the angle to 360, and I'm going to bring the AU to 1. Now I can see that there's an Atron there, so I'm going to align to my safe. Here he comes. And that was a little bit of live action there. So I don't want to engage him just now. But basically he was able to use the D-scanner to find me going to that Plex and then come in on me. Now if I hadn't used the D-scanner quickly there, I wanted a little bit more time to go through that slowly, but I would have no idea that he was coming in. He could come in on me, lock me up, and potentially kill me. Right? And he could come in something a bit more scary than an Atron. Now that I'm safe in my safe, let's just go over what happened there. So because I brought the range down to 1 AU and the angle to 360, I created a very small bubble around myself that only shows things that are very close. Now the acceleration gate is within 1 AU of the actual site of the complex, so any ship must go to the acceleration gate first before coming in on you. They cannot come directly into you. And because of that, it takes them a while to land on that gate, take the gate, align, and come in. So that means that if you don't want to take fights, you can always, 100% of the time, escape. You may not be able to escape if they're already sitting on the gate waiting for you, and they correctly guess that you're going to take the gate immediately when you land and already start heading in front of you. But that's a little bit of mind games and sort of counterplays, okay? So just to keep things simple, once you're inside, if there's no one in there because you've offensively descanned, that was the 14 AU, 5 degree angle, and looking at the thing and hitting scan, and he's gone now, then you will be safe. Then once you get into the actual site itself, you want to take up a defensive position, which means that the angle goes to 360, the AU goes down to 1, and then you sit and you basically click this. I think they've got the V shortcut, so you just pulse this really any chance you get, fairly often, while you're in the site. And if you're only wanting to complete the site and not to PvP, then you can just sit and do this and then warp out whenever you see something appear here. Now, do remember that there can be other things within that 1 AU distance. So just because something appears on there doesn't mean necessarily you should immediately warp out. What you can do is just align out, like I did, to the safe spot that you made up, and wait and see if something actually comes in, like I did there with that Atron. So because I'm pre-aligned, then as soon as the Atron comes in, I can immediately warp out. However, the caveat there is that that site that I was inside, in order to run down the timer to complete the site, I must stay within a certain distance to the beacon. So if I stay pre-aligned for a long time, I'll drift out of that distance, so I can only use that alignment method periodically. I then have to return to the beacon in order to run the timer down again. So that means if you go in and you see some stuff within 1 AU, you can start to align out, and if it doesn't come in immediately, it might just be sitting on a station that happens to be nearby. Maybe the complex is within 1 AU of the star, for example, so they may be sitting on the sun. You could, if you want to, you could start to aggressively try and find out where they are. So, go to that 5 degree and then turn to the sun while you're in the site, turn to another complex, see if you can see something. For example, anything within 14.3 AU you can do this with. But remember, you're blind defensively while you're doing this, so you want to very often go back to 1 AU and 360 and just check that there's nothing new has appeared. Okay. So that's how you can stay fairly safe with inside a complex, even though you're in low sec. Now, we're going to try and do that again, although I may have to move to a different, less populated system. The system is getting quite spicy. But it's always nice to show you some real action on screen, or me running away like a coward from an Atron. But we'll see if we can stay inside the site long enough this time that I can show you the site and the timer going down, even if we don't get to quite complete it in the system this time. Okay, so I'm looking at the site again. I am back on my aggressive D-scan settings, which is again 14.3 AU and 5-degree angle. I'm looking at the thing by pressing C. Nothing is there. He's left. I can go back and I'm fairly certain I'll be safe. Okay. I'm going to close the directional scanner for just now. Looks like there's potentially a fight happening in the system somewhere, so maybe that'll distract a little later on, or maybe I'll take a fight with them, since I may have a matchup that can win against him, depending on how he's fit. So again, good practice. I'm landing on the gate, watching for the active gate to light up, and I'm mashing that as hard as I can. And that means that nothing on here should be able to catch me on this gate. As I go into the complex, we bring the D-scanner back up, we get our defensive pose, 360 degrees, 1 AU, and it's currently clear. Okay, so we're just going to be pulsing that to make sure that our little Atron friend doesn't come back. I'll minimize that. In this site, you should be able to see the beacon and a state frigate. Okay. Oh, I have a Federation Navy cormorant. I may have to go to a distant system to complete this. I don't think I can win against this unless he's neutron blaster fit, but we're not going to, probably not going to take that fight if he comes in. Oh, and an Imperial Navy Slicer. Oof, it is heating up. Come to Tama for some instant action. Okay guys, so we moved to another system that is a little bit less spicy than Tama was, hopefully. We can see here on our probe scanner window that we do have a novice outpost that is not open in the overview. We do have one war target in system. This is what this flashy symbol is here. We've got one alliance member and one NEUT. So we'll just see if anyone's interested in fighting or if they will leave us alone and just cover what a Plex is this time. So there's nothing to aggressively descan down just now, so we'll just warp to the system. You can see here that it did pop the system in the overview. The other pilots just got that message if they're paying attention, which means we need to be a little bit on our guard. So we're going to bring up our descanner preemptively here. We're going to set it to 1 AU and 360. And there's nothing still with within 1 AU, so we're okay just now. We're going to quickly mash our acceleration gate and go into the site. Now actually I just happened to complete that site that we were in, and I got my first loyalty points here. I didn't even realise while I was running away from the Atron. Okay guys, so we're in the site and you can see that the timer is now running down. I didn't have my show all brackets there, so I couldn't see the timer at first, got a little bit confused, but we brought it up and you can see here that within the, because we're within the 30 kilometers of this beacon, then 22 there, we are running down a timer. For a novice Plex, this is 10 minutes. Because we are defensively plexing, although it looks like there is a bad guy there, he's actually on our side, he won't shoot at us, and the timer will progress even while the NPC is active. So there's no need to destroy the NPC when you're defensively plexing. You just need to run down the timer, so the advantage is on your side. Okay, and that's it for defensively plexing. Just watch if anyone is coming in, see if it's a fight you want to take if you're actively trying to get PvP fights. Run down this timer to 0 and you'll be given some loyalty points. Now, defensively plexing offers much less loyalty points than you get with offensively plexing. The only difference with offensively plexing is the NPC in the site will shoot you, and while the NPC is active, the timer will pause. The NPC will respawn every, I think, 80 to 120 seconds. So you will continually need to destroy the NPC to get the timer going. So the higher the DPS you have, the quicker you can do that, and the overall speed in which you can complete the site, because obviously you're against the clock, The longer you're in a site, the more chance, unless you're in an empty system, then someone could come in and sort of ruin your day. However, with offensively plexing, I think if the system's in T2, which is where most militias usually hang about, you'll get something like 10,000 loyalty points for 10 minutes or just over 10 minutes of offensively plexing. Now, we're going to go on and show how that translates into ISK, but that can easily translate into something between 60 to 100 million ISK worth of loyalty points per hour, depending on how many of these sites you run, depending on how many novices you can find, and how many you can complete without being disturbed. So there is variability that can depend on other people. Can stop you running sites if they're coming in and like faction frigates that you have no chance against really in your alpha. So there is variability in this method, but you can get PvP practice. You can definitely make some money, and if you want a little bit of a chiller time at a slower money making rate just to try it out, you can just do this defensive plexing, which you can do really in any T1 ship. You can't bring corvettes in here, and you can't ventures either won't run down the timer or can't be brought in. Used to be that people would defensively plex in ventures because they had the native warp core stab, so even if you weren't paying attention to D-scan, someone would come in unlikely to be able to catch you, and you could just warp off. And because you didn't need to destroy the NPC, you could just do this for as long as you liked, and just passively make income that way, just checking every so often that no one was warping in on you. So that's it for this portion. I'll see you back at the station, and we'll show you how to turn these LP points that we get into cash. Okay, so we've just completed a Plex, we've earned some LP, and now you want to make some money. So I've came back to this station in Norverkaiken, which is only a few jumps from Jita. It's a state protectorate. I think it is the closest station to Jita, which is your main market hub. If you have ever participated in running agent missions for other normal NPC corps, you may have interacted with the loyalty point store before. However, this one has a range of different items and that you may not have seen before, and because of the amount of LP that you can earn and the time that you can earn it, you stand to make significantly more money than really even a level 4 mission runner, just about, who isn't fully optimized. And depending on how savvy you are with the market and things like that, so you really are up there at that level 4 mission runner or better level of money making without needing any of the standings or a battleship or a marauder in order to complete that efficiently. So this is very accessible content for new players and still offers them that good ISK making rate. So this is a rather large store, and if I turn the filter here to show all, you can see that there is many items. Some of these are very large LP costs and very large ISK costs. Some of them have other items required as well. So lots will have an LP and ISK cost, but some may have an additional item cost that you can see here. So for this Navy Cap Booster, I would need to supply it with the normal version of Cap Boosters, and a lot of items are like this. If there's a Navy version, you usually need to supply it with a non-Navy version as a base item to then modify, and that adds to the cost in addition to the ISK cost. So how do you know if you are going to make any money on this? Because there is items in here, a lot of them tend to be these implants that you can buy and actually lose money. So that would mean that the LP cost, well, the ISK cost, and if any supporting items, and then you try to sell it, you're making basically no money, or even losing money. So you want to do this, you need to smartly and efficiently, and that's why we need to bring in a little bit outside help. Just makes everything a little bit easier. So there is a site that everyone uses, and that site is the Fuzzwork LP store.
So you can find that store just by googling LP Store Eve, or it is the fuzzwork.co.uk /LP Store. So when you enter this, you're greeted with this screen. You need to select the location you want to sell the items at, or the region anyway, which in this case is the Forge, which includes Jita. And you need to select the particular NPC corporation that you're interacting with. Now this obviously works for non-faction warfare agent missions. If you have LP with those, you can use it for this as well. But in our case, this is a state protectorate. So we're going to go to here. We're going to select sell prices. This means that we intend to sell it on sell orders. If you want to dump things just on buy orders to quickly make money, you will make less money, but you'll be able to save any sales tax, which if you're selling large quantities of stuff can be significant, and you'll be able to sell it obviously immediately. But this will be basically the Jita buy price, so we're prepared to not make as much money. But we're going to try and optimize for money, so we're going to go in the sell prices, and then you're greeted with this table. So we don't want to turn Eve into too much of a spreadsheet, but thankfully someone else has basically done the work for us, and it only takes a couple of clicks to try and find us something that looks interesting. Now, the one that we really want to pay attention to, these are all the items here, is this ISK per LP. So this is an estimate that for every single point of LP that we gain, we are going to make this amount of ISK. So obviously, if you maximize the ISK per LP, your LP goes further and you make more of a profit in theory. So one way of doing that is just to double click that until we order from the most ISK per LP to the least. And we go, right, our job's done. The Inherent Implants Lancer Control Burst CB701 gives you 10,000 ISK per LP, so it's clearly better than every other item. We should just dump 1 million LP into that and sell those on the market. And you'll find that yes, if you were to sell all of those, you would make a significant profit. However, if you look at this 5% volume figure, only 2 of them have sold within this volume metric. Okay, so the larger this number is, the more that is actively selling per day. So 1 and 2 is not many. That'll mean it will take you a long time, if ever you're able to sell these things. So not many people buy these frequently. So a better way is to find a happy medium. Now this will impact our profit, but it means that we'll sell things within a reasonable time scale so that we can actually make some money and not have to wait months to clear our stock. Okay, so again we double click this and we can see that the highest selling item is the Caldari Navy Nova Light Missile, and actually it has not bad ISK per LP. Okay, the reason this is yellow is the general rule of thumb is you're aiming to get 1,000 ISK per LP for the items, and this is actually not too bad, it's close. So this would be that would be totally fine if you wanted to do that, and you'd be able to move the items very quickly. Okay, a lot of people are buying these in Jita, and you would be sure to make a profit. But we could maybe not need to have quite this volume and see if we can boost our profits. So if we just remember 808, we've already found a few items just at the bottom of the page here. Again, it's ammo. This is very common that these consumable items get you decent profits. Remember that you do need to supply every time that you want to do this transaction. You do need to supply the base item, which means in chunks of 5,000 of the ammo will give you 5,000 output of the Navy version of the ammo. So if you want to run this twice to get 10,000, you need to supply 10,000 thorium, and so on and so forth. But we're still at very high numbers here. So let's see if we can get what our first kind of over 1,000 is. Okay, so we finally breached 1,000, which is this lead charge or Caldari Navy Scourge heavy missile. Okay, so all we'd have to do is supply 5,000 Scourge heavy missiles, bring it to the station, the State Protectorate station, and this would be an option to exchange for 5,000 of the Navy version.
and that is basically the process. You then take the 5,000 of the Navy version back to Jita and sell it on a sell order for hopefully a decent price. And you can expect to make about 1,000 ISK per LP doing that. This is a very long table with lots of fluctuations and many items. So you need to really kind of carve out your own little niche on what you like to sell, and it's basically this volume number versus this ISK per LP, okay, and kind of what you're willing to accept. Once you start going down in this value, you're basically taking longer to sell things, but potentially the profits start to go up. Is usually the trend. So try and find a nice happy medium for you, okay? And these will change over time, so make sure that you bookmark this page and come back and check it frequently. Don't just buy, you see this one's giving you a good profit here, this uranium charge medium size, so don't just buy like 1 million of the base and then just expect over time to convert that into Navy uranium charges and this price to stay the same. This could drop and other things could rise, so stay flexible. Don't try to invest in any one item too much. The market does fluctuate, but overall your ammos and things like that is generally a good thing to sell and won't impact you too much. So I'd like to just cover a couple of different fits that you can use where you're either farming LP or want to take some PvP fights against engageable targets. So sticking with the Calmel theme, we're going to look at this Merlin fit here that I have. I think I made this when I made the character, so it is very accessible, an all T1 fit, very cheap too. This is an example of a Scram kite fit, and that is its kind of trick in order to get you some wins against certain matchups that you can learn and hopefully get your first even solo kill on. So what does this fit do? Well, for guns, we've chosen Railguns here. I think I can now use the T2s even as alphas, but these are the cheap versions. I've got some close range ammo, but I could also fit some iridium, iron, or spike if I was using T2. But this is the main ammo I want to use. You can see that my optimal range is about 8k, and I can hit up to 15k, which is quite far for a Frigate weapon system for close range ammo. So I can apply quite well out to beyond Scram range, and that really is the key. So in the mid slots is where the magic happens for this fit. I'm Afterburner fit, which means that enemy Scrams can't turn my prop mod off, which means that my speed is going to remain the 667 you see here, unless I've hit with a web. I've got a Scram so that I can turn enemy prop mod Microwarpdrives off, and I have 2 webs. Now, most fits in the game do not have a prop mod, a point, and 2 webs, only specialised fits like this, which means that in the likelihood, unless I come up against another Scram dual web kiter, I will be able to control the range, because I can doubly reduce the enemy's speed if I can catch him, and I can turn off his Microwarpdrive, while I don't have a Microwarpdrive to worry about. So being able to set the range for this fit is key. And what it is if I'm against a brawling type ship, that means a ship that can apply all of its damage, and usually much more damage than I have, but only in a very short range, usually under 5 kilometers. It means that I can sit at that 7.5k magic range, or just under, and they will be either forced to switch to long range ammo, which won't do nearly as much damage, or perhaps not even be able to hit me at all, depending on what I'm up against. So if I have a, say, blaster fit 8tron, that would be the perfect target for this fit. If I can catch him, dual web him, it's an almost guaranteed win, regardless of my skill points on the character, as long as I can stay within that magic 5,000 to 7,500 range is really where you want to stay. I've got a little bit of tank on here. I think this fit needs a little bit of an update though. Back when I was playing this, small ancillary armor replicas are really good. They give you a lot of cap free armor points and make you quite durable. but I think they were very expensive back when I was doing faction warfare, so it was just cheaper just to shove on a small plate here. But I'd probably update this to a small ancillary armor repair. I think with my skills I don't need the micro auxiliary power core, but you might, until you get some advanced weapon upgrade levels, so you can replace this with another defensive module, like an adaptive energized plating, or whatever, or a nano if you want to go a little bit faster. Really up to yourself. But the main point of this fit is that you have for a frigate kind of long range weapon system, and a scram and dual web, and this will let you win certain matchups. You could even potentially win against something like a Federation Navy Comet that is blaster fit. Again, it's just like a big Atron then, and it won't be able to do nearly as much damage against you as you can do to it. And you can just sit there and outlast him as he runs out of his ancillary charges, or you just have to be able to do more damage than they can tank infinitely if they were like cap stable, which usually with this fit you usually can. Because of the mechanics of faction warfare, you force targets when you're inside plexes to come in at the entry point, so you can sit at that entry point or just a few thousand meters off it, and catch targets right as they come in, and really only the sort of fastest, best skilled pilots would probably be able to get away from you, and even then you've usually got a few seconds when they're getting away from you, for you to warp out because you've done a failed attempt. So that would be Kiter. Pure kite means that they will be Microwarpdrive fit, which means they'll be going much faster than you. They will usually have a long point, so they can point you out to like 20 kilometers, or further, depending on what they have fit. And what they want to do is they have like missiles or drones usually, and they want to hit you from a long distance, where even with your whales you might not be able to hit them or be forced to switch to your longest range, lowest damage ammo like iron or spike, and you're doing little damage to them, where they're doing their full damage usually to you at that long range. And especially you're a little bit vulnerable to this if you let them get set up on you, because you're Afterburner fit and their Microwarpdrive fit. If you don't catch them and turn off their Microwarpdrive as they come in, then you are a little bit screwed. Sometimes it can be very hard, and really only against bad pilots can you do some tricks with your Afterburner and overheating it to sort of slingshot out of their long point range for you to escape or potentially catch them. But that's, you don't really want to be in that position first. So kiters coming in on the entry point, sometimes called the button I think, brawlers, you want to face up. If you're against another Scram kiter, then they might have this dual web, which means that you know, you're both controlling the range, or you both want to sit in the same place. So like a tormentor usually wants to scram kite, and if they are a better pilot than you, if they have more skill points and tech 2 things, then they will probably still kill you, because they can do all of the damage even at that 7,500, while you're stuck with your more alpha kind of fit or your cheaper fit. So you sort of lose your advantage in that case, because they want to keep you exactly where you want to keep them. So I'll post all of these fits along with the video, so I don't need to go over them exactly everything here. It's just a little bit of extra explosive resistance and armor points. And as I say, I'll probably update it in the description anyway, just to be a bit more modern. But the basic idea stands, where this is a dual web rail fit Merlin, and it is a very powerful combo for new players against, as say, certain matchups. Another fit you can use that's fairly cookie cutter but effective is a kiting style fit on a Tristan. The standard fit really just consists of a Microwarpdrive, a long point, usually some shield tank, and some drone damage boost, since this is where all of your DPS is going to come from, is your drones, and something to make it go faster. It's a very simple and easy thing to fly. When you get into a Plex, you want to get off the incoming point as fast as you can, fly far away, still within the beacon countdown timer range of 30 kilometers, but usually, you know, is 20 kilometers away from incoming ships if you want to be aggressive, or defensive if you want to be on the opposite side of the beacon as where the incoming point is, where the timer will still go down.
The idea of this is that you can just fly away from anything approaching you very fast with your Microwarpdrive. If you're taking things down, you obviously want to long point them. This is just using Tick 1 modules, meta modules, so you'll have to stay within 24, 20 kilometers of them. You get a little bit further if you can get this to Tick 2, and send your drones after, and that's really it. Let your drones melt them. So the version of this fit here is a Tech 1 Day 1 fit, but you can upgrade this to Tech 2 drones and whatnot once you get a bit more skills. It's a very cookie cutter but effective kiting build that is quite popular in faction warfare. You don't have to worry about engagement ranges within a small area. Most other ships will either have to switch to low damage, long range ammo, or just won't be able to hit you at all at the ranges that you can kite them. So you just win by staying away. This fit is obviously vulnerable to being caught when you warp into plexes, so make sure you know what you're coming in on. Generally it's not a good idea to come in brawling ships, for example. If you get scrammed, your prop mod goes off, and then you really only have the bit of defense you have here to survive, and hopefully you kill them before they can kill you. It's really recommended that you do get to Tech 2 drones as fast as possible. It'll really help your DPS, which is really the main thing when you're trying to kill them faster than they can kill you. However, if you want to stick to a brawling fit with a twist, I personally quite like switching things up and doing this Neuting fit. And I've taken fleets of these out before, and they are very effective, and they're not at all expected in a lot of plexes. So the idea is that this time you take the exact opposite process, and you sit on the incoming point where ships are going to land on you inside a plex. You scram them, so you see you have a close point this time. And again, you're still doing damage with drones, so you have some Tech 2s in this version, but you're applying 3 newts of cap pressure here. You have a small cap booster that you'll fill with some navy charges, and what this means is these newts will basically eat your cap quite heavily. So you see here with everything on and those 3 newts on, I've only got 24 seconds of cap before I would need to hit this guy to get my cap back. But this 400 charge pretty much gives you your whole capacitor back. So you'll get 437 gigajoules of charge, and this gives me 400 back. So one hit of this pretty much gives me my complete cap back. And as long as I have these charges in my cargo hold, it's saying that basically I'm effectively stable as long as I'm hitting this at the correct time. So the idea here is that against another frigate, every 6 seconds I'm neutralizing 50 gigajoules. This is 150 every 6 seconds. So in 12 seconds, if frigates have around 437 gigajoules of cap normally, in 12 seconds I've almost capped them out. Now remember, they will likely be using scrams, points, prop mods, maybe even repair modules to repair some of the damage that you're doing with these drones. And all the time you're applying this quite heavy nuke pressure for a frigate. So in frigate v frigate matchups, you can basically cap them out. Now what that means is if they use any weapon system that takes cap, it's gone. They cannot point you, so you can, if things go badly, you can just escape. They cannot web you, so they have no range control over you if you do need to pull back a little bit, even though you don't have a web on this fit. So as well as being a win against some matchups, actually very, very defensive, because not much is going to be able to hold you down one-on-one. Doesn't really help if they have a friend. If they are quite a tanky frigate, like say you're fighting a Punisher or something that's quite a lot of HP, not too much damage, or you've switched off all the damage and you're just sort of whittling them down, you really can go down to 2 or just 1 of these newts after a while, just to keep them capped out. So you're looking for things like their prop mod still off, they're not pointing you, they're not webbing you. You can go down to 2, then 1, and if they get a bit of cap back, then you can turn them back on and apply the pressure again. Now they might have a fit that has a cap booster, so they can do an injection of cap and keep you pointed for longer. This is going to take 10 seconds to reload, so you can pretty much cap them out each time. So although they can
point you for a little bit, you're going to cap them out again fairly quickly. It's a little bit weak to anything that doesn't use cap for damage, so anything else that uses drones or projectile weapons like Mimitar, autocannons, or artillery, those will still be firing at you. Even once you cap them out, so you'll still be taking the damage, but they won't be able to use active reps, which require cap, and they won't be able to point you, which is a big thing. Again, it is also a bit weak to anything that kites you and can get set up on you, but that's why you stay in the incoming point. You try to catch kiters if you're taking the fight. Your newts only work out really within scram range, and you only have a short point on here, so if someone's sitting 20 kilometers from you, all you're doing is your drone damage. However, that's all you would really be doing with the kiting version of the Tristan anyways. You're still just doing the drone damage, so there is a bit of weakness there, but you can still apply your damage, and we can fit an extra 3 drones above and beyond the 5 that we can deploy, and that's just because for kiter ships, once they get set up on you, they might actually start wanting to kill your drones because they want to reduce the damage you can do to them so that they can survive you indefinitely, and once they've defanged you by killing your drones, then they can just take as long as they like to finish you off. So that's one strategy they could use against you. But I personally like this, one of my favourite things to take into faction warfare. This is a day 1 version of the fit that you can get into now with your 1 million skill points. Very easy. You can get Tech 2 drones from day 1 if you have that million free skill points, or you can bring it down to the Tech 1 version. I think again this fit I made when small ancillary armor repairers were like hyper inflated at 5 million ISK a pop, and that was just a wee bit too rich for a cheap faction frigate, cheap faction warfare frigate at the time. So you can feel free to replace this with a small ANSI armor repairer that gets you probably some more hit points, or at least hit points on demand, than you might get with this little plate here. But other than that, it's a fairly solid fit. Just a little bit more armor points, some cap help here. I think I was a bit pricey and I put a Tech 2, but that's not required. And yeah, it is a very dangerous little fit that even against kiters, if they get set up on you, you're still doing your 120 DPS against them, and then over 100 is considered strong for a frigate. So you're still doing damage to a kiter, and anything you can get within brawl range will just not be able to stand up against you. And at the very, very worst case scenario is you can just run away. They're not going to hold you. They can't hold you down. So you can just align out, make sure that, you time it if they're using cap injectors, time it when that point drops that you're aligned, and you can warp off and save your ship. So if you're very kind of risk averse, then it's also a good little ship to use. I chose hobgoblins here just because it is a brawling fit, which means that hobgoblins do a bit more damage after the sort of revamp of drones a long while ago, but they are slower, so when you're brawling you don't really care about the speed of drones, but it does mean that if you are fighting versus a kiter, a fast kiter, especially something like a Garmer, they could outrun these drones, so in that case, putting acolytes or even warriors in here is still totally valid. You're just going to take a little hit on your DPS, but you are going to change your damage type. So here I'm totally thermal. I could do some mix if I expect to go up against an EM target, or take on an explosive hull against an armor tank ship, for example. So there's some choices to be made, but generally this is all good. If you have a few friends, I've taken 2 or 3 of these out, and they can quickly overwhelm even larger opponents. 2 of these will cap out a destroyer in the same length of time. 3 to 4 will cap out a cruiser, and you can easily take down much meatier prey than you otherwise could in frigates. So it's definitely a good scaling one if you take a few friends out in your faction warfare roams. But even solo, it's perfectly viable. On the Caldari side of things, the Kestrel is a classic kiter ship, or it can be set up that way. So in this case, you're going for missiles for your long range, Microwarpdrive, long point, a bit of shield tank. I've just got a tick one in here. Better to use a meta module. And a defensive web, a little bit of extra damage, and we do need, I think, this little power core just to help us out. So the idea behind this is that you want to stay away from enemies. You can point them unheated up to 24 kilometers. You can heat that to get that to nearly 30 when you get a Tech 2 in there. So that's really outside the range of most frigate weapon systems that are not kiters themselves. So you can do your full damage with my good drone skills here, missile skills, out to 82 kilometers, although I think I can only target up to 62. So basically, if I can target it, I can hit it, and I can apply max damage. That is a very long range for a T1 frigate. Although my DPS is only 50, the Alpha Strike is about 641. So if you are hitting an EM hole or something with, I'll change this to explosive against an armor target, doing almost 650 damage in one hit is pretty much a whole layer of armor structure for an unbonused frigate layer. So, you know, against something that's not tanked 3 hits and it's dead, obviously there will be tank in there, but you can see it's a significant chunk of even my shields. If I was to take a hit that was 600, a few hits and you've punctured through my my most defensive layer here. So yeah, standard kiting rules apply. You want to get off the incoming point. If you're being aggressive, you want to stay within your point range roughly, or defensive, you can just run away to the other side of the beacon as far as the timer will still go down. The web here really, there's a couple of different other modules you can put in here. Some fits I've seen go with like a sensor damp, but I don't think that's as effective as the web. So the web here, although you're kiting, and when you're set up in an enemy, the idea is that you won't be using that because it's overheated. That can only get to 13 kilometers, and generally you want to stay further than that. But if something's fast, or you make a mistake and something's starting to get near you, the idea is that if you hit that web fast enough as soon as you can hopefully slow them that they won't get into scram range. So that means you can keep your Microwarpdrive on and pull range again. If they hit you with the scram, you will still be going fairly fast for a little while. So applying the web could potentially allow you to get back out of scram range, have them drop the point, and then you can re-engage your Microwarpdrive and get away. So really this is a sort of defensive web only, and under normal safe circumstances you won't be using it. But otherwise the fit is very simple. You have the power of choosing your damage type with missiles, so you can just choose whatever the best damage type is for the matchup that you're doing. Really this is only going to be weak against things that can catch you. Brawling ships will have much higher DPS than you. If they can get you at close range and scram and web you, then unless your alpha strikes are enough to take them down, or you've softened them up before they've been able to catch you, they've wasted some time, you're probably going to fail that matchup. But if you can stay away from them, then you should be good. The damage is also good that, you know, against other kiters, even expensive ones like Garmers, they might be a little bit hesitant to take you because you can hit them just as long as they can hit you. And they are in a much more expensive ship, and if you start to put them at risk, they might decide to disengage, although they'll probably be able to point you longer than you can point them, but you still may get a nice kill that way. Another way you can set up the Kestrel though is kind of a scram kite situation. So in this case, we're going to go for rockets, and you can see that again I have damage type selection completely free there, and I've just doubled my DPS, or more than doubled my DPS even. So against longer fights, you know, you're going to do more overall damage. The alpha strike isn't quite there, but you're still doing nearly 300, so half what we had before. But we've reorganized things where we have a short point this time, a web, and then pure damage boost in the lows. This fit still has a Microwarpdrive. It's basically relying on catching enemies, quick enemies, so this is really good to catch other kiters,
because you'll just be as fast as other kiters, and then you can scram and web them and turn off their microwarpdrive. And because you have this web here, most other kiters won't have a web. Although I've just shown a version of a fit of a kiter that does have a web for that exact reason. The vast majority of kiters tend not to have a web because that's very mid-slot intensive for a frigate, so a lot of frigates just don't have 4 mid-slots, whereas the Kestrel does, and that's part of its power. So again, we're a bit of tank just to keep us in the fight. We can catch things in Microwarpdrive, and then we can set range control. This is going to be weak against anything that is dual web. You will not be able to set your range, so they can turn off your Microwarpdrive with a point, with a short point. You'll turn off theirs, but you've only got 1 web, whereas they've got 2. A lot of other Scram kiters or brawlers may have a point, an Afterburner, and 1 web, and again they're going to set range control. So if you expect to go up against lots of Afterburner fits, you may wish to fit your own Afterburner and become pure brawl or pure Scram kite even, and that will make you stronger in that version. But the Microwarpdrive could be overall seen to be a little bit more useful, and also particularly if you want to catch a lot of kiters. Kiting is very popular in faction warfare. It's a much safer form of PvP because if you do it well, you're usually outside of point range, and you're outside of short point range for sure. And with Microwarpdrives, you can do fancy things in long point to make them drop the point and escape a lot easier than you can in Brawl. Brawling is a lot more committed type of PvP, where one is definitely usually going to win and one is definitely going to lose, whereas in Kiting you can sort of skirmish each other, and if it's going badly there is an easier way to extract yourself, and I think this is why this fits went with a Microwarpdrive. It's not one of my personal fits though. So this is just, I think, a day 1 version. Everything seems to be Tech 1 or meta, but again, just with these things, if you have the space for it, you can bump it up to T2. The first things I would bump up would probably be the point and the web if you can fit those. Just gives you a little bit more range, and a little bit more range on your Scram, especially when you overheat.